we can advance Medicare, we can get to Medicare all right now, right? But we don't have the votes to pass the whole thing overnight, but we have the vote to expand it. And the way it's set up is the funding for these programs, right? The way Bernie and the CPC are organizing, the funding for these programs is going to expire in a few years, right? That means, are we going to have Democrats and Republicans say, oh, we're going to take away health care, we're going to bump the age back up to 65? No, let's win this fight. And then if we mobilize when that funding sunsets, we can keep lowering the age. We can keep expanding it. But there's a strategy, right? Protest is not governing. Protest is not power. And that's what many on the left don't understand. We have to build power, right? And effectively govern, right? Within the system we live in. It's not perfect, but you know what? I love America, and I think we can make it better. And that's what we're doing. What a strategic way with movement leaders. It is inside, it is outside.
What do you say to the counterpoint that FDR wasn't naturally a progressive? There was a lot of movement progressives that pushed him to the left, and what you're saying, yeah, don't say no, we don't want the Medicare to be lowered, take it, but why on the other side can't you do things like leverage your votes to force a floor vote, or say to President Biden, yeah, we'll consider, we'll consider your infrastructure package, we want the $15 minimum wage in, voting as a block. It seems like, why is it an either or? Why can't both things be done, whether it be something like force the vote or other things?
Well, like I'm saying, forcing the vote and losing isn't necessarily good. We know
getting people on the record is not good.
They're already on the record. We know the 117 people who are on the bill. We are going to the offices of the 106 who are not. That's what it takes. Forcing a vote and losing, forcing a vote even on the 15 minimum wage, we lost it. Right? Bernie forced it. We lost it. It doesn't help our movement. 8 Democrats in the Senate. It means we've got to organize more. What moved Roosevelt was organizing. It was wildcat strikes. It was people mobilizing so that the political establishment couldn't say no. And that's where we're at in this moment. We are moving the ball forward. And if we lose on Medicare expansion, we're not going to win Medicare for all. If we lose on expanding benefits, we're not going to get to Medicare for all. If we lose on eliminating taxpayer support, U.S. government support for continued extraction of fossil fuels, we're not going to get the Green New Deal. So let us fight now and win these victories. Change does not happen overnight. I've been organizing for over 2 decades. I helped lead the Fight for 15 movement. I organized the healthcare movement around Barack Obama to get him to own it when he was a state senator in Illinois. Change does not happen overnight, right? Unless you want violent overthrow, dictator, and that's not what I believe. We are democratic socialists, and we are advancing to that vision. And what has happened in the last 5 years of our revolution since it's been founded has been remarkable. The political conversation and the strategy that was put in place has transformed our country. But the thing is, we can't just say, oh, it's been 5 years of our revolution and say we want things to change. Right? It's never the way things work in our reality.
I think this is actually a good, interesting point, because I think there needs to be more of a debate. So there's a lot of people who are saying, okay, that's fine, but we don't have time for this. People are dying now.
Yes.
Look at coronavirus. So many people, unnecessary deaths because they didn't have health insurance. So what you're saying to a lot of people might sound like feeding into incrementalism, and we don't have time for this long game strategy to lower it here, tinker around here. What would be your rebuttal that, okay, but ranting and raving and not organizing is not going to get it done?
Right, we will be worse off just ranting and raving and not saying, you know what, we got to hold. Joe Biden ran on Medicare, and he would have dropped it but for the progressive movement. He ran on expanding it. He said it. You know what? We should hold him accountable to what he campaigned on. Right now, we will expand health care for millions of people. But Medicare for all, if we just focus on that and don't focus on what is realistic strategically in this moment to get to that goal, we're going to lose our pathway to the goal.
Can I ask you about strategy too?
Sure.
Separate from forced to vote and all these other things?
This is all strategy.
No, I'm asking because I see a lot of protest around the country, whether it be Sunrise Movement, Medicare for all good things. I don't really see a lot of discussion about economic protest. You know, we're seeing the strikers in Alabama, the strikers in Topeka, Kansas, Amazon workers are organizing. There's so many people in kind of different islands protesting different things. I don't see as much organizing, let's say. Why don't we organize? You're not going to get a general strike overnight, but why don't we organize against one company more than a day and see what happens? What is your thoughts on the economic aspect of this? Because you know the politicians answer to the donors, so possibly if you affect the donors' bottom line, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, it is incumbent on the American labor movement and workers to rise up in this moment. And your viewers may not know this, but the genesis of the Fight for 15, and I was one of the key architects of the national strike movement, the genesis of that in 2013, late 2012 into 2013. Why did workers go on strike? They went on strike. Low-wage fast food workers, low-wage Walmart workers, port truck drivers who are independently, who are misclassified as independent contract laws. We generated strikes all around the country, thousands of workers, because Barack Obama and Joe Biden did nothing. And then we forced change, right? People like Bernie and Keith introduced the $15 minimum wage. We moved the political establishment. The problem is workers should be striking right now. We need labor, the labor movement, to make the same mistake as we made in 2008, which is access, going to meetings at the White House, and hoping for hope and change, right? You've got to do both outside protest, strikes, and then you win policy. And that's what we did in the Fight for 15. We fundamentally, right, it was inside and outside. That is the blueprint that Keith, that Bernie, that our revolution is carrying out, right? Workers need to strike. In this moment.
Do you think economic boycotts could be a component of that?
I think economic boycotts, look, at the end of the day, but I think workers need to go on the street and say it is unacceptable that the federal minimum wage is still $7.25. It is unacceptable that this president has done nothing to grow the labor movement. The labor movement is the backbone of the Democratic Party, troops and treasure. If we want to win in the future, if we want to defeat Trumpism, if we want to win Ohio, you got to rebuild unions. When unions were strong, we created a progressive country. Civil rights movement, health care, Social Security, right? But this president has not yet lifted a finger to grow the American labor movement. As vice president, he was the chair of the White House Task Force on Middle-Class Working Families. He was Obama's good job czar. And you know what? Union density fell more on Barack Obama's watch under Joe Biden as the good job czar than it fell more then than it did under George Bush, his predecessor. That's unacceptable. And so we can't allow that to happen again. And we need the labor movement to challenge the establishment and support workers who want to aggressively strike.
What I'm asking you is, protest is good, having your voice heard is good, but wouldn't the common sense perspective, if you add protesting with your wallet.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Because it doesn't seem like there's much strategy for that, not just among our revolution, but period. Like, imagine if the George Floyd protests, millions of people around the country, even 1/10 of those people protested, whether it be Amazon, Walmart, big box.
So you are beginning, you're right, there should be a popular economic uprising by consumers. But the problem is we live in an economy that is controlled by monopolies, right? We have corporate concentration in every industry, so it's hard not to go to a Walmart or use Amazon Prime, and right? I mean, they have taken, and that's not what we want. So what's encouraging that I think will set the conditions precedent for economic strategy and organizing, boycotts, grass up, is the anti-monopoly movement that is now coming into its own. This is incredible, and you know, we have an executive order from Joe Biden would not have happened but for Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, and progressives organizing, right? Like Keith Ellison, Attorney General of Minnesota, one of the leaders in this fight. We have one of the boldest executive actions to bust up concentrations of corporate power, like Amazon, right? We have David Cicilline holding hearings, moving legislation. We have Lena Khan, right, who one of the foremost thinkers on corporate concentration, heading the FEC. We have Cantor, just appointed, right, to DOJ to break up big companies. I think there's a moment where if we organize economically, we say we're going to withhold dollars, we're going to start using government regulation to break up market concentration, allow others to rise up, I think there's a shot, right? And that's good, because part of our movement is not just organizing from the bottom up. You got to take power on directly. And what matters to Jeff Bezos? Size, right? Size, control. So we need to make sure his company does not exist in its present form, and Walmart and every other aggregator, right, in our economy. So that's what our movement's doing. We are trying to organize from bottom up, and we're using the levers of power to destroy concentrations of power. And I think consumers have a role to play in that.